Shabbat Shalom. Look, this is how it's going to work. I will start sharing with you my Bar Torah. At some point, I might have no voice anymore, but I have my notes written, so we might have like one volunteer on my right or my left to help out. I think we're going to make it. So, have you ever felt like life? Well, candy is an important thing. Have you ever felt like life just hands you a rock and says, here, make it work? Have you ever been in that situation? Well, in this Torah portion, Jacob uses a rock as a pillow, so maybe our situation is not that bad. And on the other hand, have you ever felt, and maybe more seriously asking, in a place that feels ordinary, even chaotic, and only later you realize that place of struggle, of difficulty, was filled with meaning and potential? Jacob leaves Beersheba and heads toward Haran and stumbles upon a place, a Makom. The Torah says, Jacob left Beersheba, Vayeitzei Yaakov מבאר-שבע וילך חרנה, ויפגע במקום, וילן שם, כי באה השמש, וישכב במקום. Jacob left Beersheba and sets out to Haran. He came upon a Makom, ויפגע במקום, and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of a Makom, he put it under his head and lay down in that place, in that Makom. In Hebrew, Makom means place, but it's also one of God's names. This tells us that every place holds divine presence, and that every place has the potential to grounding us to something that is actually bigger. Now, this Torah portion is about transition, and there's sometimes an inherent pain to transitions, but not all transitions are as painful. So Jacob's journey isn't about moving from one location to another. It's a major life shift. The Kedushat Levi, the Hasidic commentator, Rabbi, links the word Haran, as the Torah portion says, Vayelech, and he will go in the direction of Haran. Harana is in the direction of Haran, to the concept Haron Af, meaning anger. He's going to a place of anger. This anger hints the future exiles of Jacob's descendants. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. The Kedushat Levi will say that basically when he falls asleep, he sees all the exiles that the people of Israel, his children, will experience over the years. And the text says, Jacob encountered a Makom. The translation says, encountered a Makom, Vayifga b'Makom. And the word Vayifga comes from the same root as Libgoa. Libgoa means to harm, to hurt. So Jacob isn't just finding a spot to rest. He's facing the pain of exile. He is feeling hurt and harm. And more interestingly is that he's not the only one feeling hurt. He says that if Gaba Makom, he will hurt the place. So he is grieving, and apparently God is grieving with him. Now, sorry, never been good at that. The the situation in which we sometimes find ourselves in which we are out of place, that things are in the wrong place, that we are not in the right place, like the Makom, our space, feels strange. It's a very, very common one. The experience of feeling out of place is one of the most common human experiences. As a matter of fact, the story of humanity starts with two individuals that are sent out of the place that was meant to be their place. Adam and Eve. It's always about finding our place. But there are places that are easier than others. And the experience of feeling out of place hits in different ways and in different levels at different times. So today we see examples of what it looks like and what it feels like to be out of place, because the translation to what happens when you're out of place is charon af, that you are really angry, boiling anger. So when we think about anger in our world, we see the destruction that is celebrated and morality that often is turned upside down. Reactions to, for example, to the killing of CEO Brian Thompson this week that showcase two different things, right? Like, on one hand, the deep systemic shortcomings of our country, and on the other hand, a messed up morality with people celebrating the assassination of an individual in the streets of this country. Very similar to the ongoing situation and turbulence in the Middle East. The war between Gaza, Hamas in Gaza, and Israel, the situation with Syria, the war in Ukraine, in which we have this language of we're going to win. Like, what's that language of we're going to win? No, we're not going to wars because we want to win wars. And the outcome or the desirable outcome of a war is not winning, it's shalom. Like, we Jews pray at least 3 times a day for shalom. The language of we're going to win, sure, like you want your side, because the assumption is that you're on the side that is seeking for shalom and well-being to overcome whatever we are fighting, but the hope is not to win. The hope is to establish shalom and freedom. Now, but these are at a large scale. We also have struggles that mirror those big and large sources of anger and commotion in our personal lives. Where is work issues? You tell me if you identify one of them. You don't have to. Work issues, family problems, or at times when everything feels just overwhelming. We all experience moments when the world feels like it's boiling over us. It is difficult to make sense of the world when that's happening, and it is difficult to make sense of our lives while experiencing this kind of motion, Beersheba, Harana. Beersheba means, Be'er means well, and Sheva is quantity of blessings. It's a place of abundance, of goodness. And Harana is not, right? So we are sometimes in these motions, and it's difficult to make sense of our lives. Now, in this vulnerable state, Jacob dreams, he sees a ladder, a sulam Yaakov, reaching from the earth to heaven with angels going up and down. God stands beside him and says, the ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and your offspring. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. Now, this dream confirms that Jacob is the rightful heir of the blessing. Like if he had any question when he was escaping the house of his parents, now God is telling him, you're fine, buddy. Just, you own this. Now, what's striking about this is that when he wakes up, he doesn't say, okay, it's time to turn around. He says, one of the most beautiful psukim verses in the entire Torah, אכן יש אדוני במקום הזה ואנוכי לא ידעתי. Surely there's God in this place, and I did not know it. And now, the big question is, you have like this big spiritual moment, you know that you are fine. You could go back home to your parents and the safety of their love. But he doesn't do that. And instead, he marks the moment and names the place Bethel, the house of God, and keeps moving forward. Now, side comment, in theory, that will be later on the place in which the Beit HaMikdash, the great temple, will be established. And that will symbolize the forever place of the Jewish people, right, to some extent. So, but that's for a different conversation. Now, why he does that? Why he keeps going? Because Jacob has learned something that is incredible. And good news, I told you that at the beginning of our conversation. The toughest, the most difficult place, and the most difficult times can reveal deep meaning, in this case, God's presence. Even in places of Haron, of anger, or of Libgoa, of harm, there is a chance to find strength and connection. But that's not what we look right for. When we are experiencing anger and harm, we want to punch back. And there's an important lesson here. The first one is that actually, in the places in which we are experiencing harm and anger, there might be an opportunity to find connection, not just to try to find meaning out of feeling hurt. That's not the point. And not all hurts are created equal. But there are places in which we are tempted to punch back. And actually, what we need to do is to lay down, to hold back, and to try to find connection. We'll talk about that in one more second. Now, I lost my line. Here it is. Now, why doesn't he stay? Because he needs to move. The Makom becomes a starting point for building a home for his own. And later, for his descendants, as we said, is going to be the place for the national home for the Jewish people, the place where Beit HaMikdash will be established. Now, the word Makom appears 3 times in one sentence. Vayifga b'makom, vayikach mi'avnei ha'makom, vayisham b'makom. He will hurt, touch the place. He will take from the stones of the place, and he will sleep in the place. Now, the first thing that happens to Jacob, vayifga b'makom, the guy collapses. He has a total meltdown. He's running away from home. He's emotionally overwhelmed and feeling the weight of his journey and uncertainty. He collapses. This reminds us that sometimes the first step in transitions is overwhelming, and what we need to do is to allow ourselves to stop, to acknowledge the hardship. And sometimes we don't have control over that. Sometimes we just collapse. The second part is grounding in the Makom. He took one of the stones of Makom, Echad mi'avnei Makom. Jacob grounds himself by using a stone from the place as a pillow. In chaos, we often need to find something stable to hold on to, whether it's a ritual, a memory, or a sense of purpose. to reconnect with what truly matters. And the third one is he lay down, Makom, finding our breath in the space. Jacob finally relaxes into this sacred place, finding a moment of rest. This stage teaches us that once we ground ourselves, we can find the space to release tension and make room for new ideas and for clarity. Later on, as I mentioned, in a different verse, a few verses later, Jacob awakens, and what he speaks about the place, he says, Yesh Elohim b'makom haseh v'anochi lo yadati. There is God in this place, and I did not know this. This realization marks the culmination of his transformation. He recognizes that even in the most difficult place, unexpected places, divine presence and meaning can emerge. Parashat Vayeitzei reminds us that when we feel overwhelmed, angry, or lost, it's time to pause. That listening to our bodies and collapsing, as awful as it might be the first step in an important reframing process. We need to reconnect with what grounds us and what's truly important to us. Like Jacob, we hold into the pieces of the Makom, a stone, a prayer, a tradition, to steady ourselves, to balance ourselves, to ground ourselves. But we can't stay there, because going back isn't an option, and it's not the real goal. Instead, we move forward, building our homes in the world, in our personal lives and in our communities. And maybe, like Jacob, as we breathe and open our eyes, at some point, we might be able to say, there is God in this Makom, in this place, and I didn't know it. May we find our place of meaning and strength, of breathing, of reframing, and revisioning as we navigate our path in this sometimes too often boiling world. And may we find the strength to breathe, rethink, and move forward. Shabbat Shalom Mevorach.